concentrate on the third one because I found this funny too. I really like it when ChatGPT hallucinates because you never know what it's going to give you. So it's a good starting point for a lot of stand-up comedians, I guess. The answer, does anyone know the answer to the third one?
The grocery store.
Good God, did you ChatGPT it?
Yes.
So now we have some other very practical riddles which it gets right, except for the third one. Does anyone want to guess what the third one is? You can't ChatGPT this time. Yeah, you're right. It's a hole in the pocket, which is something, but it's not anything. For this particular slide, I want you to concentrate on the second question. So the question was, there are 10 birds sitting on a wall. If a person shoots one of them with an arrow, how many are there? And exactly. So ChatGPT says 9, but it doesn't understand the environmental conditions that would lead all of the other 9 birds to flee the scene. So it says there would be 9 birds left. Like in the mathematical sense, that would make sense. But in the physical world, there are other factors into consideration. Now this is another interesting riddle, which has a very cheesy answer. It can have multiple cheesy answers actually. What's the thing that is broken? Then there is no sound even after breaking it.
Heart.
Yeah, something like that. Like a very cheesy sort of like a friendship or like something abstract. And the answer that it gave me, I did not expect this answer. It was like an egg. That's straight up because it has no experience of being in the real world, of seeing an egg break and hear the sound of the egg breaking. It got all of these right. So for this one, the first one is there are 2 mothers and 2 daughters in a car, but there are only 3 people. How is it possible? It's because they're all related to each other, and they're like pairs of daughters and mothers. But it thought that the possibility for 2 women to be identical looking and not being twins, but actually being triplets, was unique for ChatGPT. Now this could mean multiple things. It could mean that all of the answers that it is deducing are derived from the corpus that it was trained on, and maybe it never encountered this possibility that only 2 people out of a triplet were present in a certain area. Or it straight up doesn't have the common sense derivation at this particular moment for it to understand that 2 people of a group of triplets could be present at a certain place at a certain time. So the first question is, a lady was buying fridges for 10,000 rupees and selling them for 5,000 rupees. After a few years, she became a millionaire. How? Does anyone want to answer this question? It's a spin-off of a very popular joke, I would say, not even a riddle. Yeah, who said that? But ChatGPT doesn't know. You see, it's like, oh, we're playing riddles or mathematics or something. So let me make up some hypothesis about how this can even happen in terms of assets or something. However, it did understand that 1 kg of iron is equal to 1 kg of cotton. And I respect it for this because I got that wrong once. And I was like, but what if you put the 1 kg of cotton in water? So it's supposed to hold the weight of the water as well as the cotton. Does that make sense? Does that even make sense? Another example of how it gets relationship wrong is in the second riddle, where it's like a man and his son met with an accident. The man died and his son was taken to the hospital. And the doctor said, I cannot operate as he's my son. How is this possible? And ChatGPT is like, this is straight up not possible. But it's possible because the doctor was his mom. You see? The doctor was his mom. Another example of like a trick of sorts with language, because language can be so tricky, is there is a bowl of 6 mangoes, you took 4 mangoes, how many are you left with? You took 4 mangoes, so you're essentially left with 4 mangoes. But ChatGPT over here doesn't understand the context of you versus whoever the original bearer of the mangoes was. So it's like you would be left with 2 mangoes. It's right with the math. It's not right with the person who has 2 mangoes. So I want you to look at the first riddle. There are 5 students in a room. Naida is watching TV. Amreen is playing chess. Anamika is reading. Shruti is eating. Can you tell us what the 5th student is doing? Does anyone want to guess? Yeah, because 2 pairs. But apparently, we should probably ask this guy to like ChatGPT again, just to find out if it understands that now, you know? The second one is interesting too, because it's a question that a kid might get wrong, you know? It's like your parents have 6 sons, and each son has a sister. So how many kids does your parents have? And they're like 12. It's like each son. But then every son would have 6 sisters. And how many apples can you eat with an empty stomach? And it gives like this whole paragraph of like some sort of philosophy, which is fine. But does anyone want to guess the right answer to that?
All of us.
No, it's 1. Because once you eat 1 apple, you're not hungry anymore, you know? Your stomach's not empty. You see? The second apple that you eat is not on an empty stomach. And it can't do math. It's straight up, like at this point at least, it couldn't do math. It would just give up, you know? It was like, how can you share 10 mangoes equally between 9 people? Then don't try. We can't do it. So one of them will have to go without a mango. But it got the rest right. It gets simple relationships right, because the first one is an example of a simple relationship. And I want you to also look at the third one, which says a girl came to a town on Monday, and after 2 days she left on Monday. Is this possible? I think this riddle has the stupidest answer I've ever heard, but it's
I've heard this really one.
really. Well,
She left the city on the horse with me Monday.
yes, you're right. It's like, because language as humans know it is so moldable, and we've made it like complex in terms of like say poetry and prose and riddles, which is so metaphorical that you have to think like that. Again, the second one is an example of how it gets simple relationships right. If your uncle's sister is not your aunt, what relation is she to you? She's your mother. And it does get like all of those birthday riddles, right? It gave me a very elaborate answer to like this question, and it is right. So this was a complicated question that I got right. So the first one is another example of how you can ask it a complicated relationship question to get it wrong. And does anyone want to guess the answer to the second one?
It's BC, right?
Yeah, he's right. But ChatGPT didn't know. That's good. It didn't get Venn diagrams right. The first question is a question of Venn diagrams. Has anyone used Venn diagrams here before? So ChatGPT is sort of unable, at least at this point, was unable to visualize Venn diagrams and get to the correct answer. And if you tell ChatGPT that that's not the correct answer, ChatGPT, at this point at least, will reframe the answer in such a way that what you say is the correct answer will be its correct answer. Like you could just convince it that it's wrong, and to give you the answer that eventually comes to the answer that you want it to come to. These are some riddles that it got right. Then there's those classic hourglass problems where you have a 7-minute and 11-minute hourglass, and how can you boil an egg in exactly 15 minutes? I don't know if you've ever saw these sort of problems, but that's what I did when I was a kid. But ChatGPT can't do that, so me as a kid wins over ChatGPT. Again, it doesn't understand all these substitution problems, which are the building blocks of a lot of fields like cryptography, etc. So it'll say that if this is a mathematical riddle, the answer in the statement is straight up not true. It's not true according to its concept of mathematics. So what do you think is the point of this exercise? Do you think this exercise was worth it? How many of you think this exercise was worth it? How many of you think this was a total waste of time? How many of you think we should just do this for the sake of entertainment, if nothing else? Everyone's out at this point. So the reason why I did this is we need to get a better accurate definition of AGI. AGI is artificial general intelligence. And humans, when we understand intelligence, we cannot actually understand intelligence that's unrelatable to the human experience. So when we say that artificial AI is intelligent, what we mean in the things that also correspond to how humans are intelligent. Like, how would you say that a human is intelligent? They can do math, they can do a variety of tasks, they can understand some sorts of languages, they can divide complex tasks into smaller ones, etc. There are certain intelligence that we do not understand. Like, for example, we know that octopus as a species has a type of intelligence that is not relatable to the human experience. But when we say AGI, we specifically mean human intelligence. Historically, different people have had different interpretations of what general intelligence means in the artificial intelligence sense. And a few of these definitions actually can be considered as achieved by GPT in its current state. A diversity of perspectives is required to define it, because after this slide I'll show you a bunch of definitions that have existed at this point, and you'll understand how they're all different from each other, but you will agree with each of them in the sense that, yeah, this I would consider intelligent. And the fact that we may actually never reach 100% AGI in terms of how complex the definition of AGI is. So these are some of the historical definitions of AGI. The first one is a Turing test. But if you read through that particular definition, you will realize that Turing does not prescribe what should qualify as intelligence. Only that knowing that in that interaction, the thing that you're interacting with, whether you know it's a machine or whether it's a human, that's the only thing that matters in the Turing definition. The coffee test, I would say that GPT could perform today, because if you give it a bunch of APIs and you tell it that, okay, use this API to go fill like water into some sort of container, use this API to fill like coffee beans, use this API to ground it, it could do that. The report called Student Test is the basis of a lot of papers that have come out about GPT. It has actually passed a couple of these exams. The employment test, again, depends upon what sort of job. And we do not actually need GPT to pass the employment test, because we all know that in comp sci, if you've seen a couple of automation tasks, they do take over certain sorts of employments. So for the employment test, like the bar is like so low that certain automations could pass the employment test. So what is GPT? GPT is a language model, and specifically it's a large language model. Each of us actually has a language model inside of our heads, and it changes constantly. When we interact with the world, when we interact with each other, it changes constantly. A language model embedding, which is like a vector representation of a particular sentence, is a multi-dimensional representation of a given sentence based on the context or the environment in which our language model was trained, which is similar to humans. It's like our language model was trained by all of the experiences we've had since we've taken birth, or maybe even before that, who knows. The existence of a language model leads to NLU, which is natural language understanding, and NLG, which is natural language generation. These are sub-problems for all other NLP problems. Like everything else in natural language processing is based on either understanding or generation. Thank you so much.